What is the art of observation? I wanted to begin with an inspirational quote from Dr. Maria Montessori herself about the importance of observation. She states, "The teacher must derive not only the capacity, but the desire to observe natural phenomena. The teacher must understand and feel her position of observer. The activity must lie in the phenomenon." Dr. Montessori's educational and professional background began as a scientist and a physician, where she was trained in making careful observations. She applied these observation skills to her work with children, much like an anthropologist or botanist, observing even the smallest of details. And that's what she urges each of us to do as well. Observation, then, is a hallmark of the Montessori philosophy that guides all that we do as Montessori educators. It is a tool that provides us with important information necessary in order to follow the child. It is a critical component of lesson planning and classroom management. Observing simply means watching like a camera on the wall, being factual, and recording only what we see: the child's movements, their language, their posture, their actions, their words. Observation is watching and paying careful attention to small details. There is nothing in the definition of observation that requires action. Observing, then, is seeing or perceiving without any need for action and without any judgment or analysis. It is the process of objectively monitoring a child or children to see how they behave and what they know. Observing allows us to discover a child's interests, their needs, and their abilities. It helps us to identify when there's a developmental change, and occasionally when there's a need to step in to set a limit or to provide a little bit of help before stepping out again. As Simone Davies says, observation is a scientific way to look at the child. It is a tool for us to better understand the child, to transform ourselves to see the world through their eyes, and to be humble and looking how to support them in the best way. Although it may seem too good to be true, observation is really as simple as taking time to pause and make note of what is happening around us. We can act as Dr. Maria Montessori did by using 4 interrelated elements that Dr. Paul Epstein developed that he calls C.O.R.E. The C.O.R.E acronym stands for connect, obtain, reflect, and engage. These elements build upon Dr. Maria Montessori's method. Using these observation practices daily allows observation to become much more than a system of record keeping. It becomes a way of life. This method allows us to discover a students' interests and questions and to connect with them. While investigating our own questions, we can use one or more recording methods to obtain our information. We can then reflect on that information and create a deeper understanding. And based on those understandings, we can ask more questions, obtain more information, or engage with children's learning and development by implementing new practices, new environments, and new materials. Each of the 4 core elements is guided by a key question. The key question for the connect element is, what are my interests or the interests of my students? What is it that I want to study and learn? Then we ask, what information do I need to collect as I pursue my interest, for the obtain element? For the reflect element, we ask, how will I understand what I have obtained? And finally, for the engage element, we ask, now what will I do with these understandings? To begin, you should write your interests and needs as connecting questions. These questions will guide the method or methods that you use to obtain and record your information. Reflections will allow you to determine if more information is needed or if there are changes that should be made to yourself or in the environment, such as making new materials, refining the physical space, modifying lesson presentations, or making accommodations for individual students. Observation may seem daunting at first, but the best time to start is now. We can begin by establishing a set period of 5 to 10 minutes to practice observing and to begin asking ourselves simple questions. Where is each child? What are they doing? What kind of movements are they making? To successfully observe, we must learn the skills of silence and stillness. In our fast paced world, it can be challenging to just sit quietly, but it's this type of stillness that calms our senses and enables us to observe each child's physical, social, and emotional cues. Remaining silent also allows us to understand how the children react in various situations without our interjection or interruption. It can be helpful when observing to imagine that you've never met the children and that you're simply writing down everything that you see. Record all the little details that you witness using factual, objective language. Remember that you want to stay that objective observer. This means removing any personal thoughts, biases, and analyses and recording only what you see. For instance, instead of making the assumption that a child loves puzzles, you would simply note, he repeats the animal puzzle 10 times, then returns it to the shelf, carrying it with both hands. Focusing on what you see means removing how you feel about the behaviors that you've observed. This can sometimes be tricky since being a guide is a really emotional journey and we are hardwired to make judgment. Sometimes having a specific focus to guide our observations can be helpful with this. As an observer, we may then choose to focus on a specific area of a child's development, such as their fine or gross motor skills, their communication skills, or their social emotional skills. We may also observe during specific times of day, such as while children are eating lunch or playing at recess, or maybe even during a transition time. Here are a few ideas of the developmental areas that you might pay careful attention to when observing. Fine and gross motor skills. Watch to see how children move their hands and fingers, how they hold and carry objects, how they make larger movements, how they sit, stand, run, balance, climb. Communication. Listen to the sounds, words, and sentences that a child uses. Watch their gestures and facial expressions to see how they communicate non-verbally with others. Cognitive development. Cognitive development. Pay attention to what the child is learning, what they are working to master, and what they're showing interest in. Social development. Observe how a child interacts with us as the guide and with other peers and adults. It can also be helpful to watch how they observe us and others too. Emotional development. Pay attention to what makes the child laugh, cry, become angry, frustrated, and how the child expresses and communicates these emotions as well. And independence. Observe how a child performs tasks in the classroom without assistance from others. Pay careful attention to what they do and say when they need help or support. While observing and taking notes, some helpful questions to ask include, has the class progressed towards normalization? Is there a feeling of respect and community in the environment? Which materials are being used and which ones aren't? What stage of development is each child in? Is the child working to master a material or have they mastered it and now they're working towards perfection? Does the child have a favorite material or activity they work with every day? Is the child able to concentrate, and if so, for how long? And do other children or teachers protect the child's concentration? Dr. Maria Montessori described 3 types of observation: direct, indirect, and self-observation. We're going to focus on the first 2. Direct observation involves remaining still and quiet to dedicate all of our attention to solely watching. This type of observation is that which requires objectivity, making it very pure since we are not interrupting the child. Indirect observation involves watching the child while being active with them and noticing how our interactions with them take place. This type of observation can be challenging because we're requiring ourselves to multitask. Sometimes the value of indirect observation can be overshadowed, as emphasis is often placed on direct observation. In The Absorbent Mind, though, Dr. Maria Montessori said, even when helping and serving the children, She, the teacher, must not cease to observe them, because the birth of concentration in a child is as delicate a phenomenon as the bursting of a bud into bloom. It can be helpful then to alternate between these types of observations depending upon your focus to get a well-rounded view of each and every child. There are several recording methods used to obtain information. The connecting questions that you develop will help you determine which recording method or methods is best. A journal is a private record where you can express your feelings, identify met and unmet needs, and celebrate victories. It allows you to reflect, refocus, to try out hunches, to clarify your interpretations of what's going on, and to collect ideas. Physical maps record the locations and activities occurring in an environment. At specific time intervals, a child's initials are placed in the section of the map indicating where they were when observed. Over time, physical maps document how children use the environment. Short notes can also be added to the map. Anecdotal records capture what is said and done, as well as interpretations and evaluations. They're written in a narrative style with short sentences or paragraphs as an event occurs or after. They can be written in a notebook, on sticky notes, or even electronically. A running record is a written narrative about a particular event. It starts when the event begins and continues until the event finishes. 3 columns can be helpful to identify what is happening, one's interpretations of what has happened, and any follow-up questions or notes. Checklists record information about specific situations or behaviors. They can be used to record curricular progress and completed work, capture key aspects of the day's activities, and to identify behaviors that did or did not occur. Since checklists are predefined, it takes far less time to complete this type of recording method. Rating scales judge how much or to what degree something is or is not happening. They take little time to complete and provide information about the rater's judgments or perceptions about the connecting question or topic. And for this reason, more than one person should be completing a rating scale so that the results can be compiled and summarized to show a more objective picture. Finally, time samples record predefined behaviors during a predefined time interval. Tally marks record that the defined behaviors occurred during that time sample. Again, this is a quick and easy recording method that is used frequently. Seeing children in a new light through the art of observation is fascinating, but you may be asking, well, what happens next? What do I do with the information I've gathered? Simone Davies challenges us to consider what we've observed and what one change we might make this week based on what we've noted. This small prompt allows us to reflect on where we are and how we might better meet a child's needs by making preparations personally and or in the environment. Sometimes no change is needed at all. It's just an acknowledgement and an acceptance of where we are and where the child is at that time. Some examples of behaviors or actions that you may observe and what you can do afterwards include a child removes puzzle pieces using their thumb and index finger. So you might offer additional opportunities for that child to practice with their pincer grasp. You could offer slightly more challenging activities that require the refinement of their grasp, like pouring from a cup with a handle. If a child repeats a puzzle 10 times, they're working diligently to master that puzzle. You would avoid interrupting their concentration, and you might offer additional puzzles at a similar level or slightly more challenging level for them to continue developing this skill. If a child reaches out to take a toy from another child, we don't interrupt. We wait to see how the other child will respond. We might prompt their thinking and problem solving by saying something like, 2 children and 1 toy. What should we do? If they need additional support, you can translate for them. It looks like you want to turn with the knob cylinders. You can ask, can I have a turn when you're all done? Step in with gentle hands to keep everyone safe if needed. The value and importance of observation is easily overlooked. Teachers often don't find themselves lying awake at night, restless and unable to sleep because they didn't conduct an observation. Parents won't be sending emails or wanting to meet with you because you failed to adequately observe their child. Yet the benefits of observation are immeasurable. Watching a child's behavior allows a guide to observe their growth developmentally. For instance, we can note when a child's hand grasp of objects begins to change as they develop their pincer grasp, useful for holding a writing utensil. This knowledge builds an awareness of the types of activities that we can introduce that match this developmental level. Similarly, it allows us to understand a child's interests so that we can provide lessons and suggest materials aligned with those interests. Observation also enables us to give the child some space for independence. It encourages us to pause before we provide assistance, allowing children the extra time that they might need to complete tasks and make decisions for themselves. Removing our own biases and preconceptions also empowers us to really see and accept children for who they are and for who they're becoming. Perhaps the relationship in which observation yields the most power is the one we have with ourselves. Observing the children and observing ourselves empowers us to identify and to meet our own needs and desires and enables us to help children grow as we grow with them through Montessori. Seeing ourselves and others for who they truly are and responding in appropriate manners strengthens our social emotional skills and establishes a strong foundation for all of our relationships. In fact, as Dr. Maria Montessori reminds us, it is the things we see that truly begin to form our soul. No matter how busy we might be, we should make a diligent effort to take a few minutes each and every day to observe, because the benefits are great and many. Your first attempts at observing may be very short if children are settling into a new Montessori classroom and still developing concentration. You might only have a few moments to scan the classroom while you're working with an individual child, or to reflect on how a lesson is going as you're giving it. When you're able to step back to observe, though, you encourage children to rely more on one another and themselves. And this empowers older children to step forward and be role models, and really empowers children to make decisions on their own, to think critically, and to become more independent. And for these reasons, I challenge you to take the time to observe. Watch children closely to identify their developmental growth and allow for their independence. Attune to their needs and determine how you best might support them. And listen to yourself and ensure that your needs and desires are being fulfilled as well. If there are several adults in the classroom, take turns so that every day someone has an uninterrupted block of time, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, to simply observe. Sometimes it's helpful for children to know that if a teacher is sitting in a special chair, standing in a certain place, or has some kind of accessory like a pair of glasses or a hat or a necklace, that they're observing and should not be interrupted. It serves as a visual cue. Try to identify a specific location in the classroom where observations will take place, or use this nonverbal cue and inform students so that they know it will be happening. These routines help children encourage this daily practice and protect its sacredness. Take what you've learned about observation and use it today, and accept the challenge of making the art of observation a daily practice in your Montessori classroom or home. Here are some simple tips to help you get started. First, stay curious. Continue to consider what each child's needs and interests are and what changes you might be able to make in the environment or within yourself to best meet those needs and to appeal to those interests. Be objective. Make sure your own beliefs or preconceived ideas don't influence your observations. Simply write what you see. And finally, avoid analysis. Although it's important to take time to reflect on your observations and to consider the meaning behind what you've seen, this time is not while conducting the observations themselves. Stay present in the moment, simply noting what you see. Then go back at a later time to review your observations and analyze their meaning. As we conclude today's session, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound importance of observation in the Montessori approach. Observation is at the heart of Montessori education, a practice that allows us to truly see the child for who they are, to understand their needs, and to guide them in their unique journey of growth and development. It is both an art and a discipline, requiring patience, humility, and a commitment to ongoing learning. Dr. Maria Montessori reminded us of its importance when she said, "The teacher must become the observer of the child and recognize the latent powers and potentialities that exist within. Through careful observation, we create a classroom environment that meets the needs of each and every child, offering opportunities for independence, concentration, and joyful discovery." How has the practice of observation transformed your understanding of the children that you guide? What moments have stood out to you as revelations of their inner potentials? We'd love to hear your reflections and insights in the comments. Thank you for joining us today. By dedicating yourself to mastering the art of observation, you're unlocking each child's unique potential and honoring their individuality. We're honored to support you in this meaningful work here at CGMS. Be sure to follow us on social media for more resources and inspiration to enhance your Montessori practice. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for your commitment to seeing and supporting the whole child through observation.